Call on Mr Chris Little to move the motion.
Thank you, Mr Principal Deputy Speaker. I'm grateful for the opportunity to propose this motion today. I remain convinced that there is no bigger challenge for our society than addressing our deep divisions. We have, of course, made significant progress, not least in establishing these democratic institutions, but I believe we owe it to our community to produce the most ambitious shared future strategy and plan possible to deliver on the Good Friday Agreement promise of sustainable peace and prosperity for everyone in Northern Ireland. 15 years after the Good Friday Agreement and 8 years after the original shared future strategy, I believe people are right to expect more from government in tackling the human and financial cost of division in Northern Ireland. The scale and consequences of the problem should, of course, not be underestimated, and we know that the financial cost of division to the public has been estimated to be in the region of £1 billion per year. Despite reports of progress and some level of agreement from the Office of First Minister and Deputy First Minister, a failure to find compromise on contested issues at a political level has left many people disillusioned and disengaged. We have to set out a vision and a plan to tackle all unsettled issues that remain, patterns of segregation, intimidation and fear that all continue to have a serious impact on our economy and the quality of life of people across Northern Ireland. The Good Friday Agreement put the responsibility for leading reconciliation at the heart of government. The Shared Future Strategy in 2005 stated clearly an approach of sharing over separation, and that separate but equal was not an option. It said that parallel living and parallel provision of services have been rejected as both morally and economically wrong, and the strategy was accompanied by the requirement for all government departments to produce 3-year plans which would plot actions against good relations targets to be measured every year to achieve its aims. Mr Speaker, I think therefore we have a decision to make as to whether we are going to settle for anything less than these standards that were set. If we are going to listen to people who tell us that the Building the United Community document is the best that we can hope for at this stage, I am convinced that the community believes in better. Reconciliation workers, victims, ethnic minority groups all responded in numbers to tell OFM DFM to get out of town when the first devolved draft community relations strategy, the CSI strategy, was produced back in 2010. Alliance worked hard and contributed significantly to the OFM DFM working group attempt to improve this strategy. But when it became clear that key issues such as integrated education, flags, parades, dealing with the past were being dodged, then we did withdraw. We have come under attack since, but as a party with members who have given their lives in the struggle for fundamental institutional and community change in Northern Ireland, we would never support such inadequate proposals. Mr Speaker, we didn't sit on our hands either. We published our own.
Across the chamber, the member has the floor.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. We didn't sit on our hands. We did publish our own proposals in the For Everyone document, and we set out a clear vision of a shared and integrated society, free from discrimination, intimidation and fear, and based on the values of equality, diversity and interdependence for everyone. We put forward specific proposals in terms of a shared future policy proofing tool that would have no public investment without testing whether it be appropriate for good relations. We put forward modest targets of 20% of children educated in integrated education by 2020 in order to meet parental demand for new integrated schools and to simplify transformation processes. And indeed, in recent polls, we have seen that 80% of parents support a request for their child's school to become integrated. 70% agree that integration is the best preparation for living in a diverse society, and yet still we only have 7% of our children educated in an integrated setting. We also made proposals in relation to housing and flags, in particular in relation to flags. The Good Friday Agreement, The Good Friday Agreement recognises the sovereignty of Northern Ireland as part of the UK, unless and until people decide otherwise, and indeed the right of all people in Northern Ireland to identify themselves as British or Irish or both, as they may choose, and that cannot be affected by any future change in the status of Northern Ireland. This unique constitutional arrangement, therefore, we believe is best reflected in a respectful and balanced manner by the policy of designated days, which could be a long-term settled policy for this issue, whether Northern Ireland is part of the UK or Ireland. We also made the proposal that we should have meaningful consultation around symbols for Northern Ireland. We have no occasion where one flag or one song is able to be enjoyed by absolutely everyone, and that's something that can be looked at. David Ford also proposed an alternative all-party working group with an independent chair and community representatives, as well as political representatives, to try and restart a stalled process. And whilst the First Minister and Deputy First Minister declined this invitation, they have recently published the Building a United Community document, the name of an Alliance Party policy from 2003, and they've proposed an all-party working group to address a number of key outstanding issues. Any change in language and any set of initiatives that are going to address the symptoms of division in Northern Ireland should, of course, be acknowledged. But we must say that this does appear to fall well short of the fundamental change and comprehensive framework that we believe is needed to tackle deep division, to stabilise economic development and to meet the aspirations of people of Northern Ireland to live in a shared society for everyone. I must say, if the First Minister thinks these are the most ambitious set of proposals ever, then I think he's wrong. I'm not even sure they're the most ambitious this year. And they do seem to be more akin to a political public relations exercise to appease certain governments who were making complaints about potential investment not being possible. There appears to be little detail in terms of budgets, work with relevant departments, action plans and monitoring, but we do, of course, await publication of more detail in relation to the strategy. The First Minister, amongst his ranting and raving and biblically inaccurate metaphors of recent weeks, did say one very pertinent point. He said that it is fundamentally wrong that we segregate our young people on the basis of religion at the earliest age. And I would agree with him on that. I have to ask him, therefore, does he really believe that proposals for 10 shared education campuses and 2-week summer schools can credibly claim to tackle and produce fundamental change for a system which he says is so fundamentally wrong? There are serious concerns that this is a decisive policy change away from Good Friday Agreement and shared future commitments to integrated education. And the idea of a shared education appears to be an acceptance of a dual system with work to increase cooperation. The Shared Education Advisory Group recommendations, of course, merit close consideration, and meaningful cooperation and collaboration across sectors should be welcomed. People, of course, must have choice, but surely we have to work towards a more meaningful integration of education of our young people. The Building a United Community document also makes proposals around housing with 10 shared neighbourhood schemes. It's my understanding that there are already 30 shared neighbourhood projects in existence, and with 90% of social housing thought to be segregated, is this really radical change being proposed? The United Youth Programme remains to be more detail added to it, and something that can be looked at as potentially positive. And the eye-catching headline in relation to interfaces can only be possible with an adequate strategy. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, despite rubbishing the proposal in this Assembly as incredulous, the First Minister does now appear to have accepted the Alliance Party position that the previous closed OFM-DFM working group was inadequate, and that any working group to adequately address these issues should have an independent chair and include members of wider society with relevant expertise. We do need to make this search for a robust shared future strategy much more than a political process, and one that includes the wider community. If we are to tackle unemployment, persistent deprivation, adequate childcare provision, nursery, health, investment and tourism, and to build our economy, then we have to tackle the costs of division and build long-term sustainable peace. People in Northern Ireland need to decide, and we need to decide, whether we want to manage division or to transform this society into a truly united community with a prosperous economy for everyone. I ask the Assembly to support this motion.
Stephen Murcher to move amendment.